Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Expat Hoops, where we talk to basketball players who have played the pro careers outside of the U.S. Today, we talk to former Georgetown and Dayton player Vee Sanford, who started in Iceland, Germany, and France for multiple seedings before moving to Italy this year.
And just a reminder that we rely on listener support. Subscribing to our YouTube channel and liking the videos has a big impact. For our audio podcast listeners, it's very similar. Follow and review us wherever you get your podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, pretty much wherever you find us. But now let's get into it with our guest today as he joins us today from Pesaro, Italy. Welcome to the pod, Vee.
Thanks, man. It's a great time to be here.
Well, we've been looking forward to this. We'll start back at your college days. You actually started close by geographically to us. You started at Georgetown your first two seasons under John Thompson III. Opted to decide to go to Dayton. Take us through what that transfer was like for you at that particular time. What was the decision process and leading to going from Georgetown to another school that wound up being Dayton?
Well, first off, I would just like to say I grew up a Hoya fan in Kentucky, so that was my dream school. Allen Iverson fan, and so I really wanted to go there. But the process of me transferring, I was really just, my grandmother, she had fell ill. My parents had wanted to come see my games more. They were only able to see the Louisville and Cincinnati games. So, they couldn't travel so much to Washington, D.C. And that played a big role of me transferring and getting closer to home and choosing University of Dayton.
You started out at Georgetown, and then you were going through a process of transferring out because of the illness with your family and being closer. Our Dayton fans wanted to ask you specifically, why is Dayton basketball better than Georgetown?
I'm not going to get into that, but Dayton is a special place. It's really a basketball city. At Georgetown, you have to compete with the Wizards, the Redskins, even though they're in Maryland. There's just so much in Washington, D.C. compared to Dayton, where, you got two schools, Wright State, University of Dayton, that pride themselves on basketball. So Dayton is a typical Midwestern basketball city, and they take pride and joy in going to the games. Every game is sold out. So Dayton is just a special place, man, and it's something that I feel like everybody should experience to go to a UD game.
And we'll probably get into a little bit more about your time at Dayton in some of the extras. But after two successful seasons at Dayton, where you put together wonderful numbers, had great success in the NCAA tournament against Ohio State, you are coming to the end of your college career. At what point did you think that playing professionally was, I guess, for lack of a better term, realistic for you? A lot of people that we talk to are clearly high-level athletes, and they always dreamed of playing professionally. But when did it actually become more tangible for you? Like you actually thought, okay, instead of it being a dream, this can become a reality. And what did that look like for you in terms of like finding an agent and, maybe talks amongst coaches, things like that?
I always had that goal to play professional. I kind of hit when I was a senior in college at Dayton, that, I could really do this, make some money with it. And I always had the vision, but I just didn't know where. And I think the thing that a lot of college basketball players don't realize is, unless if you're like a lottery pick or, a draft prospect, and if you land outside of that, it's kind of hard to get your foot into the door and to getting into Europe, because first of all, you do have to find an agent. You got to find someone that really knows the market, because every year there's thousands of guys that go into the European market or the Asian market or wherever you want to play. So for me, it was hard. So I had to kind of learn that it's really a process, and you kind of just got to be at the right place at the right time just to get the opportunity. So my first year, I had like high expectations, just playing in a higher league, kind of like where I'm at now. But man, you kind of got to start at zero and build your resume up. So just like any job, you got to just build your resume up and go from there. So that's the process I had to go through coming out of college.
It's not uncommon to hear something like that. In fact, we've heard it from a few other people as well, that, it's kind of, you sort of do start over for a lot of people. There are some people that maybe got like high level exposure from, an extended tournament run or something like that, or that they got invited to a tournament and that they did well and they were able to, I guess I would say, skip a step, but sometimes a lot of it is building up the levels. So before you were able actually to do that, what did it look like for you in terms of selecting an agent? Presumably you've never selected an agent before at that point in time, and they're all kind of probably telling you different things. So what was the conversation like with your agent at that time? And I guess the other question is because we've been doing this long enough, are you still with that agent?
Well, the hard part was just finding an agent. And I had some coaches hit me up. Archie had recommended some guys. Alan Griffin, an assistant at Dayton, had recommended some guys. But I ended up going with an agent that was, I think he's still with my cousin. So I ended up going with him. And like I said, my expectations was to get into the higher leagues at first, but I didn't know. So he had placed me where the opportunity was given. And currently I'm not with that agent now, but I'm thankful for the opportunity that he helped me get my foot in the door with. So yeah, that was the process for me as far as picking an agent. It was somebody who I was familiar with, from a family member.
So let's dive into your pro career. You go to Iceland. I want to pronounce this name correctly. Is it actually Thorl? Is that right?
It's Thorleson. It's like the TH. It looks like a P, but it's like it's a TH. It's like
okay.
Thorleson. Yeah, that's the club I went to, first club.
And you started there in 2014. So tell us about your time in Iceland. We've had a couple of people that have played in Iceland, both male and female representation there in the Icelandic leagues. So tell us about that as your first landing spot in pros.
Well, as a rookie, it's an experience because the town I went to, Thorleson, was maybe 800 people, and it had one stoplight in the whole town, and it was like it was a fish town. So imagine a fish town. So you smelling the fish every day and off the water, and it's cold air hitting your face, and we have practice at like 6 or 7 p.m. because some of the guys have like regular jobs, and it gets dark around 3 o'clock or sometimes noon. So you don't have that much daylight. So for me, it was an experience, and I was out there by myself. So I had kind of like, I had to adjust to a lot because it's just like this small little town, and I got to wait until the end of the day to practice. So for me, it was an experience for myself, and the league. Americans have to like put up crazy numbers, especially if you're a guard. So it's kind of like that attitude every night, every game. So for me, it was an experience, and it kind of got a little depressing, especially toward like the dark months of December and January, because literally there was no daylight. It was terrible.
Yeah. Sun rises at like maybe 10:30 and sets at like 2:30, if that.
Yeah, it's quick.
And it's
quick.
it's like dusk light. So it's perpetually dusk from sun up to sundown. That's the best you got. It's like like 6 or 7 p.m. in the summer here, if that. So
well, yeah, another thing about Iceland too is you're not necessarily having as many American imports as you might in some of the other leagues, depending on when you played there and everything. So was that something that for you that you think that was a part of the struggle to adapt, in addition to the weather? The weather would be enough and the daylight, but do you think that that's also something that factored in?
Definitely, because at the time, well, on my team, we could only have one import, and that was just me. And then I feel like there were a couple of teams in Reykjavik that had maybe one or two imports that were American. But Reykjavik was like a 45-minute drive, and I had to go through the mountains just to get to Reykjavik. So I was pretty much isolated, and a lot of my teammates had families at the time, and I'm 23, 24 years old, stuck in an apartment all day. So I had a lot of like built up energy. I couldn't really go out how I wanted to at first. So like it was an experience. Like I said, I learned a lot about myself. I built up different hobbies. The nighttime there is beautiful because you got the northern lights. So I kind of tapped into different things while I was there instead of just, going crazy.
That's an interesting question, though. What hobbies did you pick up?
Well, I started to read more books. I started to just do research because I got my degree in history. So I just did the research on the area I was in and throughout all of Iceland. And I looked up, there's a road called, it's like the Golden Road or something like that. And it takes you all through Iceland. So I did that. I drove around to like waterfalls and like volcanoes and stuff like that. So I kind of just explored.
So that's actually sort of one of the things I think, depending on who the guests are, some people are into video games, and that's fine. That can serve a worthwhile purpose. But a lot of the guests that we've had so far have pretty much largely leaned into, get to know your area, get to know, your teammates, a lot of suggestions similar to that. So this is pretty earlier on in your career. Would you say that maybe Iceland was a blessing in disguise, and that maybe it paved the way for a lot of the rest of your career in terms of how you approach the experience?
Definitely, because if you can live in Iceland, it's a wonderful place. But as an American living in a small town, if you can adapt there where it's 800 people, one stoplight, maybe 2 or 3 restaurants, then, the rest of Europe should be cake. And I learned a lot about myself and what I can do in certain environments. So it was definitely a blessing in disguise.
So you started out in Iceland. It sounds like that you had a fairly good time there, though there were some obvious downsides to it. You end up in Germany, though, for Wurzburg in 2015, which, Germany is one of the premier basketball countries in Europe. So let's talk about your time in Germany and how that differed from your time in Iceland.
Well, I ended up in Germany through a friend because after I finished in Iceland, I had went home and I had got an injury, so I sat out a season. So a friend of mine had recommended that I come out to Germany in the 3rd division, and I went out to the 3rd division just to make around €700 a month, and I ended up playing really efficient out there for about 10 games. And my 3rd division team had a 1st division team. So I was trying to go home for a Christmas break, but I didn't have enough money, and they weren't paying for my plane ticket at the time for the 3rd division team. So the coach from the 1st division team had just said, stay here, just do the training camp with us. We kind of need some players. And he had liked how I was practicing with the 1st league guys. So he decided to keep me and train more. And in Germany, you can bring a guy from the farm team and practice or play a certain amount of games. And for my luck, some guys had got hurt to where I had to play. So I ended up playing, and I ended up playing really well, and they ended up signing me for the 1st division league. So Germany was like, it was a great experience for me because I had got an opportunity to make a big jump in my career. And from there on, I didn't look back. But Wurzburg is another basketball city. It's where Dirk Nowitzki's from, was the club he played at. And, the German public, they love basketball. They're passionate with their beer, with their the sausages and stuff like that. They love basketball out there. So it was a great experience.
Yes, we've had conversation with at least one other person on the pod that played in Germany that talked about the beer gardens and all that other sort of culture.
Yeah,
which I'm familiar with that as well. full disclosure. So I got to ask you, did Dirk ever appear at any of the games that you were at?
No, he didn't. I never had the opportunity to see him, but apparently he goes back now. When he can, when he's able to. But I didn't have the opportunity to see him.
Yeah, he's got a little bit more free time than he did necessarily back then.
Yeah,
exactly.
But after Germany, you moved on to France for an extended period. 4 different teams, all in the top division in France. So you have a little bit different experience, even though you were in the same league for 4 years in a row. A lot of people that listen to the pod may know that getting a multi-year deal with a club is a little bit of a rarity. So that's not necessarily by itself anything that's unusual. But you do get to stay in one spot for 4 years. Well, one country for 4 years anyway. The first one in 2017 to 2018. Before you kind of got the lay of the land in the next few seasons, what was your sort of introduction to pro basketball in France? So you'd been kind of close to the line your season prior, but this is your first season actually playing in LNB Pro A. What was that experience like?
Man, it was great. My agent had recommended that I had go to France and leave Germany because he said the pace there is different. It's a lot faster. You're dealing with a lot more athletes. It's an up and down game. It fits how I like to play. So he told me it was going to be great. And the spot I was going to go to, it's right on the water. It's off the Mediterranean. So, I feel like it was a great opportunity, and France is my home. I live there now. So, it was the best decision I've made in my life so far. One of the best decisions.
Good save.
Yeah, exactly.
So you do spend the next 4 seasons in France. Take us through kind of year by year what sort of the differences are between the different clubs that you played for. Some of them are a little bit more known than others in terms of like as an American looking in on them. But take us through sort of what the contrasts are between the seasons, because you're also getting the COVID season in the midst of being in France, and what you're saying in terms of having the familiarity with France leading up to that has to be a good thing, because a lot of times people, no matter where they played, whether they were playing in the same country, before COVID season hit, whether they came back to it, or if it was a country that they'd been in before previously in their career, you've really got kind of a unique experience where you've been kind of building in France, and there was some level of familiarity that. And so if you could kind of take us through what your COVID story was as it sort of hit, and hopefully I'm assuming that there wasn't too much additional of a hardship for you, given the fact that you were pretty familiar with living over there by that particular time.
Well, yeah, I mean, like I said, the first season I was out there, I was by the water. I was in Antibes, France. Great experience, kind of a lower budget team, but it was in the first division. So it was just an opportunity. But that's probably the club I'll probably go back to when I want to coach, or I want to be a general manager when I'm finished playing basketball. So that's probably the club I'll try to use my connections with. I met my wife there. She had worked partner for the club. So I met my wife, there through the club. So Antibes was great. I go back there every year. I live in Nice, France. So it's like 15 minutes away. So whenever I'm back home over the summer, I'll go back to Antibes to train. Then the following year, I went to Chalon-sur-Saône. It's a pretty well-known club. Malcolm Delaney, I'm sure you guys know about him. He played there. So I went there. It was a great experience. It's kind of in the middle of France. It's really known for its wine. It's in that area, in the Burgundy area. I had a great time there. And then I went to a pretty big club in Limoges, CSP Limoges. I played there with Marcus Ginyard. He's from the area where you guys are from. Great guy. Love him. And Limoges is a great experience. It's a big club that demands a lot out of its players. I grew a lot mentally up there. They love basketball there. So then after that, I kind of did a taboo thing. I went to Po, and Po and Limoges are like a big time rival. They despise each other. So kind of think of Duke in North Carolina, or think of a kid transferring from Duke and going to North Carolina. It was kind of like that. It was exactly like that. So when I had a 2-year deal in Limoges, but I had opted out of my 2nd-year deal, and I went to Po. So that was kind of just like, it was blasphemous for the Limoges fans. So when I made that move, a lot of the Limoges fans were emailing my wife, tweeting me, tweeting my wife, tweeting everybody, cussing me out, calling me all kinds of names, all kinds of dogs. So then my last year I played in Po, France, and it's a beautiful city. And that was a great experience as well. But the COVID year happened when I was in Limoges, so 1920. It was a kind of a weird year for me because it was like the first year I kind of got an injury and I had to miss games. So I was kind of in and out. So by the time I got back in, so I had missed about 2 months. So by the time in March, the season had ended. As soon as I was about to get, going, the season had ended, and nobody really knew what was going to go on. I was secure as far as like financially because I had a 2-year deal. And in France, a lot of people don't know it's the taxes are crazy there, but there's a lot of stability as far as insurance and the lifestyle. France is the government there. They kind of keep everything kind of balanced a little bit. So, I didn't have real worries as far as that, but just the uncertainty of finding a job when I opted out of my 2nd-year contract. And the last year we had a period where the whole team, when I was in Po, everybody had got the COVID on the bus, and the whole league had missed a few games, and not a few, a lot. We had missed a month. So for one period, we were playing one game every 3 weeks. So imagine how many people were getting injured, or, it was crazy. So they had prolonged the season, and we ended up in the season in June. The regular season ended June 20th of last year, of the summer. So it was a long season, and it was a quick turnaround. So this past year was kind of crazy also because I had my son that was being born in the first wave of the COVID. And then my daughter who was born here recently, but my wife was pregnant during the second wave of the COVID. So it's kind of been it's been crazy, man, but you live and you adapt.
Was your was your wife and family over there with you, or were they just stateside?
No, well, my wife is French. She's
Okay.
French, and
Okay.
so they were there with me the whole time. And I
That's
actually
good.
it was great, but the only downfall of it was I wasn't able to go back home because she was pregnant and because I had my son at the time. So it was about 2 years since I had went back home, and the last time I went home was this summer for like 2 weeks. So from 19 to 21, I hadn't had the opportunity to go back to the States.
How was the French league for you in general on the court? I know we've talked about some of the stuff off the court, but you spent 4 seasons there. Were you in the top league most of that time, or have you been in back and forth sort of between different leagues?
Oh no! Since I was in France, I stayed in the top league. The only regret I have is not being able to play in the playoffs, and that was because of the COVID. The year I was in Limoges, we had qualified for the playoffs because we were top 8, top 7, and the COVID happened. So that's really the only regret I have. But the French league, man, it's a tough league, man. They have a lot of NBA prospects coming out of there. I feel like right now in Europe, France may be the best place as far as young NBA talent.
I believe it.
There's a new guy every year, a new kid coming out of nowhere. It's just far as raw talent wise, I feel like France is the best place. And now they're starting to lock in more, and they're trying to and I tell my friends this every time. America has a target on their back, and France is really trying to compete and push forward to be the best in Europe and the world now. So they're taking their training serious. They're having these schools of teaching the kids fundamentals even more. And I feel like the program of basketball has improved, and it's going to get even better within the next year. So
once basketball
it's
teams,
a tough place.
Yeah, once European basketball teams can really tap into that soccer mentality and get those youth clinics and get really deep into like teaching 8 and 9-year-olds the game first and move them up, that's going to be a problem. That's going to be a problem.
It's going to be a problem.
We're already getting a lot of talent out of Europe, but
Yep.
a lot more talent is going to come out of Europe then, because then you're going to have the best athletes starting to play basketball.
I'll add this too.
In Africa too.
Yep,
Yes.
I was going to say Africa's one, but another one that really comes to my mind is Australia. Australia is really making a push too.
Australia.
So I mean, France, Australia. I mean, Spain's top league is always up there in terms of a country and everything. So I don't think that that's as much of a surprise from people. But and France maybe not so much a surprise either. But like you said, I think that there's a difference in terms of France putting out a good number of people from time to time, and then, like you're saying, making the leap to regularly putting out top people. Like you said, there's a conversation every year who's next. I think that that's kind of the next evolution for France, and then maybe you start seeing multiple people in different classes. And as we're recording this in April of 2022, I think you can take a look at some mock drafts, and I think there's at least 2 people that are in the French league right now, and I think that there's a French talent
like
in another league. Yep.
There's 2. One of my young guys that played with me, he's in Australia doing really well. So
yep.
Really, who played with you?
It's a hotbed. This kid named Hugo Bisson.
I think he's on New
he
Zealand.
Plays for the Breakers. Yeah,
yep.
He plays for the Breakers, and I remember him every day in practice, and he had a crazy growth spurt, and he got his confidence right. So it's crazy that he's on the draft board now. So
while we're touching on France, normally we do this type of thing for the extras, but since you did bring up the latest and greatest, teenage, early 20s kind of guys, really young, growing prospects. Who was the player that you think that was a young guy that came up to kind of surprise you while you were playing there? That was like, oh wow, this guy's pretty good. Did you have anybody like that?
Honestly, there's quite a few, man. What's the kid's name? Well, the kid from he's like projected lottery, I think next year. The 7'2" kid, Victor Wanabu or something like that. I didn't know he was that damn tall. I didn't know he was that big.
Yeah, that was last
year. He's huge. He played for Nanterre. He's with Asvel. He's with Tony Parker's team now, but I didn't know he was that tall, and he can move his feet really well, and he has really great touch. So him and I like Elliot Kobo. He got drafted by the Phoenix Suns. He's a great talent. And Teo Maladon, he plays for the Thunder now. He played for Asvel, but he made a jump. He was kind of just, you could see his confidence and his body changed a lot through one year, and then he was on the draft board. So, and even now, there's a couple more kids that's going to make some more surprises. So those 3 off the top of my head that I can remember the most.
Yeah, that should definitely be an extra. I actually pulled up some of the mocks, and Hugo was one that I remembered off the top of my head, and that's why I was able to get it right away that he's in New Zealand, because I think New Zealand has another prospect that's from, I can't remember if they're Australian or if they're also an international, but the NBL is making a big push to get a lot of the top level talent, and
that's a great
and France has been up there for a while, so that's also not a surprise either.
NBL is definitely a great league for upcoming prospects and just exposure. Just to, they got to deal with ESPN, and they got a lot of exposure. So it's a great league for that.
Yep, absolutely. So what was the decision like in terms of you spent the last 4 seasons in France? What was the decision to to go to Italy. It's another top tier league, so it's not like you're going down or anything like that. But what was your decision like to leave France to go to Italy? Was it strictly sort of another challenge? Was it money, or was it what was it?
Honestly, it was just to try something new. Also, like I told you before, the taxes in France are crazy, and now I'm a resident. I'm a French resident. I'll have my passport within the next year. So my taxes are crazy. So my wife had just suggested this year, let's just get out. Everything in Italy, the teams are already pay the taxes. So I'll pay taxes in France, but just to have a contract with what you actually make, and this is what you actually make. I think that was pretty cool just to try and experience. And Italy's a great league, and I just wanted to try something new.
And so off the court, what has been your experience so far with Italy? Have you been able to see some of the sites, get immersed sort of in the town that you're playing in, or some of the places that you've been going to?
Definitely. I went to Milan. Well, I used to try to go to Milan before my wife came. I used to try to go to Milan every other weekend just to sightsee, to shop a little bit. Since she's come back, the spending has went down as far as what to budget. And then I haven't had the opportunity to go to Rome or Florence, but I'm about 2 hours from Florence. I go to Bologna, which is like an hour away. But pretty much everything here in Italy is pretty historical, and every corner there's something that something romantic or something from a different era of time that you can learn about, or that I have learned about. So pretty much every part of Italy is pretty historic and worth seeing.
And on the court, what has been your experience? You talked a little bit about the German fans and what things are like in France, but what would you say, comparing and contrasting those other high level leagues? What has been your experience so far in adjusting to Italy on the court?
Well, Italy is it's a tactical league. The defense, the court is a lot more packed in compared to France. France is kind of free, like I said, free flowing, getting a lane. You kind of got to have some one-on-one game. Here, it's very tactical. The court is, everybody's loaded up. The scouting reports are on point. So here is a lot more, I want to say more mental. You got to be more focused mental out here. And then the balance of the teams is pretty much the same. Outside of 2 or 3 teams, if you look at our standings, it's 1 game, 2 game difference from the 5th place to the 14th place. So every night is unpredictable. Like right now, we're in the 8th place to go to playoffs, but last week we were in the 14th place, and this is just a difference of 2 wins. So this league is very competitive and very unpredictable.
Well, Vee, thank you for coming on the show today. We appreciate your time with us, and we want to have some more time with you with our usual Expat Extras. For those of you that are listening on the audio pod, please go over to our YouTube channel to hear any extra content, which you can see exclusively there. Vee Sanford, thank you for coming on to Expat Hoops today.
Thank you, guys.
Hello, and thanks for watching. Be sure to give the video a like, and you can watch more videos over here. You can also click subscribe over here so you're notified when we have new content here on Expat Hoops.